What's going on, guys? Jacob C. Winter here. Today we're talking about cold email versus cold calling, which is right for you and why. I've made over, let's say, I think 10,000 cold calls at this point, and I've sent probably over 100,000 cold emails. I've brought in over a million sales with cold outreach, and I have a strong opinion on this topic, but I want to share with you what's right for you, cold email or cold calling. Let's get into it right now. Before we dive in, go ahead and check out my free lead generation training. It teaches you how to build rock solid lead lists, which, by the way, cold email and cold calls both don't work when you don't have a good lead list. Your list is your strategy, and if you don't build the right list, it doesn't matter how good your script is. So go ahead and grab the free training down below. You'll also get access to my Facebook group where you can ask me any question you want, and I'll try to answer it there as soon as possible. Okay, fantastic. So as a precursor to this topic, I want to say cold emails and cold calls will only work if your niche that you're targeting actually uses their phone or uses their email, meaning if the niche you're emailing doesn't check their email, like an auto mechanic, for example, and they never really check their emails, they're under a car all day. Therefore, cold email is going to be a poor channel for them. No matter how well you try and optimize your cold email campaigns and write a good script, you're probably not going to break a 30 to 40% open rate, which is half of where you want to be. Okay, a cold call will probably do a better job of getting them on the phone because they do pick up their phone. So, another example. A B2B SaaS marketer, you can cold call them, but they're going to have much lower pickup rates than if you were to cold email them. And they actually prefer to be cold emailed. So certain niches prefer one channel over the other, and you kind of have to know your niche and decide what's the best channel for me, first of all. But this video is going to kind of take, let's say, everything being equal. I'm going to assume that your niche both uses their email and their phone, and you can pick one or the other. So let's get into it. Let's start off with cold calling. What are the pros of cold calls? So I think cold calls are probably the fastest way to book a meeting. There's really nothing faster than picking up the phone and having a live conversation with your target customer. After all, the whole point of a cold email or a LinkedIn DM or whatever is to book a meeting so you have a chance to talk to your customers live with your voice, right? Maybe over a video call. But if you can just get them on the phone off the bat, why wait for an email? There's less friction in the buying process. You can get them right on the phone, pitch them, and get them going really quickly. And if you're a founder at an agency or a SaaS founder or even a new salesperson in a new role, and you're trying to figure out what the cold call pitch is, you're trying to figure out what to say, you haven't successfully scaled anything yet, you're still testing pitches, you're still testing messaging, that's fine, but you can use cold emails to do that. But with cold emails, if you send 100 emails, no one may respond to you, or the people who respond to you might just say not interested or unsubscribe. And that gives you very little to work with in terms of figuring out why weren't they interested. And that's the whole point. You're trying to figure out why aren't they interested? How can I make them interested? So when you have them on the phone and you pitch them live, you'll hear their objections, you'll hear their tonality. You can ask them in real time, hey, why aren't you interested? Or what's making you want to pass? Or what are you more interested right now? What are you focused on solving? And they'll tell you. And then you can just refine your pitch much faster and get to a point where you are booking consistent meetings. So if you're optimizing for speed and you really want to break through the cold outreach wall, so to speak, and go from unsubscribe, hang up, don't talk to me, to yes, I want to book a meeting, yes, I want to buy, the fastest way to do that is cold calling. There's no faster way to reach your prospects, nor is there a faster way to get market feedback. Number two, I think I already mentioned this a bit, but it's the fastest way to learn. It's the fastest way to improve your messaging. You can make 100 cold calls, get market feedback, listen to the calls, and then very quickly pivot your pitch and try again over and over again. You're going to learn really fast. Okay, I'm going to make this third one. I know this is a bit controversial, but it is. Here we go. In some ways, cold calling is actually easier than cold email. And I know what you're thinking, Jacob, wait a minute, what do you mean it's easier, right? One of the cons of cold calling, we'll get to in a minute, is how hard it is to actually bring yourself to cold call. It can be really scary. It can be nerve-wracking to make some cold calls, right? You get that feeling in your gut where, it's the feeling of fight or flight. Why? Because when we were, let's say, hunter-gatherers, and we were living in small groups, if you were an outcast in your social gathering, then you could die. If you don't have anybody on your side, it's pretty dangerous. So we're wired as human beings to be social creatures, to fit in with a group. So rejection is painful. Rejection is scary. Rejection brings pain. But if you can overcome that, which I feel like I still get once in a while nervous, or I still get that feeling, but I've gotten quite good at overcoming the feeling to the point now where I can sit down and just start ripping dials with little resistance and feel fine, which also helps improve my cold call conversion rate. But that's not what I mean to say. I know that's a factor, and when I say cold calling is easier than email, I don't mean psychologically it's easier. What I mean is you get to use tonality, and it's a real-time conversation, and therefore you have much higher reach to book rates. So there's three types of communication. There's body language, there's vocal tonality, and lastly there is the actual words you choose. And body language makes up the majority of communication. I think it's close to 50% or maybe even 50% of all communication, interpersonal communication, is actually visual. It's body language, right? You can tell a lot about someone's mood and what they're thinking and feeling by their face, by their if they're closed off or if they're open or they're smiling or upset, right? So body language can say a lot. Tonality also has a big impact. And when you cold call, you'll learn that what you say is not as important as how you say it. Okay, one more time. What you say is not as important as how you say it, right? So upward inflections, downward inflections, pauses. All of these things impact your success on the phone. And you can also read other people's tonalities, right? You can use their tonality to your advantage. And that makes communication way faster and way easier on the phone than email. With email, all you get is the written word. That's why email copywriting is hard, because a lot of the nuances of communication are lost when all you have is a few sentences on a screen without any tonality, right? So that's why I think one of the reasons why cold calling is more powerful, and therefore you actually have a much higher reach to book rate. So what does that mean? Out of 100 people, let's say that you cold email, let's say a successful campaign is 80% of them will open the email. Out of those 80 people that actually open the email, maybe you'll get, I don't know, let's say 80 times, let's say you get 14 people to respond. And out of those 14 people, 5 of them are interested and 4 book a meeting. So 4 meetings out of 80 open. That's 4 divided by 80. That's a 5% reach to book rate. So out of every 20 people that actually read your message, 1 person will book a meeting. Now, if you take that same reach to book rate methodology with cold calls, right? Out of every 100 people that you pitch on the phone on a cold call, you should be booking 15 to 20 meetings. So it's 3 to 4 times higher. When you actually get them on the phone, you're going to book 3 to 4 times more meetings, because most people are afraid to cold call, and most emails get ignored. So when you cut through the noise and you get them on the phone and you're a normal person, you're confident, and you deliver value succinctly, your odds of booking a meeting are much higher. So that's why I prefer cold calling. I've used both for Service Bell and for Experiment 27, and I found that cold calling is actually more effective. I used to be a cold email all the way guy. I booked actually $1 million in sales over cold email. I've only brought in a few $100,000 from cold calls because Service Bell's a new company and we have small deal sizes right now. But that's not the point. The point is, I used to be a cold email guy all the way, die hard, cold email, let's go baby. I hated cold calling. But once I started cold calling and I realized the power of it, despite its challenges, I found it to be much more effective, and I now prefer it over cold email. I still cold email in the background, but I definitely prefer cold calls when possible. Now, some of the cons of cold calling are, it is more grunt work in that, unlike a cold email campaign where once you send it, you kind of just let it go and see what happens, cold calls only happen when you make the calls. So they are more grindy, there is more grunt work involved, and that can be taxing, just I guess from a resource perspective. If you're hiring people, it can maybe be a bit more work to cold call. And also psychologically, it's more taxing, right? Like having to sit down and cold call, especially in a remote environment where you're selling by yourself in a room like this and there's really no one there with you. It can be lonely when you get rejected over and over and over again. I mean, you should probably get 4 or 5 rejections before you actually book a meeting. And that hit rate can be taxing when you get told no and you're all by yourself. You can feel even more lonely. It can be bad for your psychology. Now, there are some ways you can overcome that challenge, but that's not for now. We'll talk about it in a future video. That said, there are ways. Actually, I'll give a few quick ways to overcome that now. One way is just having healthy psychology outside of work. Making sure that you're doing things you enjoy, making sure you're exercising, you're eating right, you're sleeping well, you have positive relationships, you're pursuing something meaningful, right? Whatever it is, you're feeling good outside of work. Maybe if you're exercising before you cold call, that helps get you into a good mood and it helps you get rid of some anxiety. Those 2 things are quite important. And thirdly, you can use a tool like Nooks, or Service Bell is coming out soon with a sales floor where you and your coworkers can actually cold call in a virtual sales floor. So you can cold call together and have a good time together live and actually have some camaraderie again, even though you're in an environment. So fine, cold calling. Let's get into cold email pros. So cold email is more passive in some ways. Both require you to build a lead list and write a script. But once you have your email script written and you have your lead list built, cold emails can be more passive and you can just kind of send the emails and go. One of my clients sells magic shows with cold email, and he just prospects lots of people and sends out a message. And it's pretty passive for him at this point because he has a tool to scrape leads, and he has a script, and he blasts it out, and he has a wide market, so he can just kind of let it run in the background. Now, I'm trying to help him dial that in and be more effective, but once you have your script working, in some ways, cold email can be more effective and less grunt work. It's also less mentally taxing. It's a lot easier to be told no and to be rejected in the inbox when someone says no via text versus live on the phone. It's for some reason less scary. It doesn't hurt as hard. And so if your psychology is a concern and you really, really are afraid of cold calling, well, then you probably shouldn't be in sales actually, because you're going to get rejected a lot. And I think those who are good at cold calling make the best salespeople. They will learn skills that are important: rigidity, consistency, discipline, succinctly communicating value quickly in the face of rejection, right? Those are all important skills, but cold email, you can get around some of those challenges and get right to booking without having to deal with some of those painful things. Let's see what else. I think email, the cons of email are that it is slower feedback. So you're going to send 100 emails and not get anyone to respond to you, or if they do respond to you, they will take a few days, and also the responses will be very short. They'll be like no or a few words, and therefore it's really hard to actually glean insights from those, right? You have to respond back and say, hey, what made you want to pass? I'd love to learn from this, and hope they respond back with more feedback. You can get feedback over email, and I can talk about how to do that, but it's going to be slower, and you don't get the tonality, and you don't get to ask them follow-up questions so much. So it's a much slower learning process with cold email than it is with cold calling, because you don't get the raw data. I would much rather make cold calls, learn the pitch over the phone, and then apply the language to an email versus try and figure it over cold email. It's just much faster on the phone. And you also, because of these challenges around not having access to the tonality, etc., you're going to have a lower reach to book rate. We already did the math. Cold email is like 5% on average to cold call, let's say 20% of people that you actually get to hear your message or read your message. You're going to convert 3 to 4 times more on average when you get them on the phone than when they read your email. The phone is more powerful. So I think overall, if I could choose one, I'm going to go with cold calling, but they're both pretty good, and it also really depends on your niche. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and grab my free lead generation training down below. I hope you found value in this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.